and welcome to Cleveland Conversations. I'm Neil Hodges. Our guest today is a trailblazer in the world of Hollywood costuming. With a career that expands over several decades, Harold Crawford has dressed some of the most iconic figures in film and television. Not only is he one of the first black costumers in Hollywood, but he has also had and has a profound passion for giving back to the community. Today, he's here to talk about his remarkable journey, the lessons he's learned along the way, and how he's using his experience to inspire and mentor young talent in Cleveland. Harold Crawford, welcome to Cleveland Conversations.
Well, thank you.
First off, it's a two-part question. What does a costumer do, and what's the difference between a costumer and a costume designer?
My responsibility as a costumer is to maintain continuity for the actors, make sure that the clothes are organized, do research as a costumer. It varies. It starts with learning. It starts with a script. You read the script, you break it down, and then you have a conversation with the designer. It's a collaboration between the costumer and the designer. I start pulling clothes. I do research. For instance, Men of Honor, working with a costume designer there.
The film.
And that was the film, Men of Honor, yes. My responsibility was to do the research based on the period and to pull the clothes and to collaborate with the costume designer in putting that together. You know, so that's pretty much what it is.
Okay, so explain what a costume designer does versus a costumer.
I'm not a costumer. They envision the image of the costumes that's going to be created. That's their responsibility. They do the same thing. We both do the same thing, the research. But they're the ones that execute the designs and for the actors. They're the ones that sit down with the actors and with the directors and everybody, and based on the director's vision, the costume designer makes that happen.
Okay, so now does the role change depending on whether it's TV, theater, or other mediums?
For television and film, it doesn't change. You know, the responsibility of a costume designer, if they're hired to do a TV show, that's what they do. They're the costume designer. There's also the middle person, which we call the wardrobe supervisor. They're the one that manages the day-to-day activities. So it goes from the costume designer to the wardrobe supervisor to the costumer. Okay. You know, but our responsibility is, like I said, well, for film and television, that's it. Now, theater, it might be different. You may be a costumer / costume designer. That's the difference.
Okay, so you've been around for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
What was your preparation for this career? What got you going?
What, for theater?
For your career.
Oh, for my career?
What was your preparation?
You know, that's I initially went to I wanted to be a buyer for the fashion industry. I wanted to go into the fashion industry as a buyer. I worked for Orbox. I went to a fashion institute, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising.
Which is where?
In Los Angeles.
Okay.
I graduated from there. I went did 1 year. I think they had at that time. You went for a year and you got a certificate. But then that was when it was in the embryo stages. They had 23 students back then. Today it's more expensive, and some of the costume designers that work in film and television today actually graduated from there.
Okay.
You know, so but initially, I wanted to be a buyer. I wanted to work in the retail industry. I ended up working, going into a program which is called, at that time, the Minority Labor Program, Minority Labor Pool, as well as they had affirmative action and the NAACP.
Okay.
So because I had a working experience in clothes, I was accepted as an apprentice, to go into the program as a costumer, as an apprentice. But once I got into it and once I started doing it, it was something that I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it because it was just here you are, you know.
So affirmative action allowed you to take advantage of a program for minorities that introduced you to the world of costume.
Yes. Well, no, for me, affirmative action was one, but for me, it was the minority labor program.
Okay, the minority labor program.
Yeah. Back then, understand, I started working as a costumer in 1970, 1969, 1970. And during that time, what was the need was faces of color behind the camera. You know, you had actors, black actors in front of the camera, you had black directors, but as far as like the crew that worked behind the camera, there weren't any faces of color.
Okay.
So minority labor pool, affirmative action, NAACP, they all lobbied to have faces of color for anyone that had any kind of interest in any aspect of the film industry. You know, if you were a photographer, if you knew how to use a camera, you know, when you filled out an application, that made you eligible. You know, I went to Paramount Studios and I filled out, at that time it was the unemployment of the employment office. I filled out an application, and based on what I wrote down, I was accepted as an apprentice. I was put in that category of wardrobe. See.
So you've been around a long time, since 1970, 69.
Yeah.
So that's a long time. So what are some of the productions and actors you've worked on that our audience may recognize?
Well, at Universal Studios in the 70s, I did the original Hulk with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby. Other people might recognize that, but then...
Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, Ferrigno, okay.
Yeah, Ferrigno. Then I did Night Gallery for a while.
Rod Serling.
With Rod Serling. I worked on Men of Honor, Swordfish,
With
Benson.
Swordfish with...
The Swordfish with Hugh Jackman, Swordfish. I worked on Men of Honor with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robert De Niro. I worked on a movie called King with Cicely Tyson and Paul Winfield. I worked with Muhammad Ali and Chris Christopherson on a movie called what was it? So many of them. Freedom Road.
Freedom Road.
Yeah. So it's just, and the list goes on and on.
So what about television?
Television, Hang with Mr. Cooper, Living Single, Amen. Everybody Hates Chris. Benson.
Okay.
Robert Guillaume was a mentor for me. He was
Robert Guillaume.
Yeah, he was the first person in the industry that I give a lot of credit to. He mentored me. He, you know, kind of someone I could go to. He was a good friend in this industry. And then we ended up doing Phantom of the Opera. He was the first black man in history to be the Phantom. So when he got that, he asked me to be his personal dresser. So that's what I did with him.
And so for our audience, Robert Guillaume portrayed the character Benson, which was popular on ABC in the 70s. Mm-hmm. He was also the first
80s,
black
yeah.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he's also the first black actor to portray the lead in the Phantom of the Opera that you dressed.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're from Palm Springs, the desert, Coachella, right? And now you're in the rock and roll. Yeah, you're from the desert, Coachella. And now you're in the rock and roll capital of the world, which is Cleveland. So explain your journey from Palm Springs, California, to Cleveland, Ohio.
It has been a journey. It's been interesting. Well, I grew up in, I was born in Dallas, Texas, but I ended up, we moved to Palm Springs, and I stayed in the 50s. So we were in Palm Springs. I grew up in Palm Springs in the 50s on a reservation. I went to Palm Springs High. My mom worked for Frank Sinatra and the Marx Brothers back then.
Wow.
She was their cook. But then I went from Palm Springs to Los Angeles. When I went to Los Angeles, I went to Compton High. So I graduated from Compton, straight out of Compton, everybody. What can I say? I got to say that anytime, that's
Snoop Dogg territory, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
so. And then I ended up going from there into Hollywood, and when I was at Compton, I expressed an interest in theater and acting, and my dad actually took me to an acting class in Beverly Hills. So we used to catch the bus from Compton to Beverly Hills. That was quite a drive, Los Angeles, going from Compton through Los Angeles into Beverly Hills. And my father worked at night, so he'd say, "Do you know how to get back home?" I'd say, "Yeah," and that's how we did that. But eventually, like I said, I ended up in the Fashion Institute, which eventually I ended up as an apprentice working in the film industry. So my whole life has been surrounded by the entertainment industry. At some point, that's what I did.
Right. But how did you get from L.A., Palm Springs to here?
How I got to here, I said, "Yes, dear."
Okay. Yes, dear, meaning?
My wife.
Okay.
My wife is from here.
Okay.
I never thought about Cleveland. Never thought to live in Cleveland. Never thought to live anywhere. I'm a Hollywood guy. Los Angeles. That's where I lived. I would travel to go to different locations to work on productions, but then I'd always come back to Los Angeles. But one time she was visiting her son and grandkids, and I just asked her if she wanted to move here. But I'm thinking about it, and once I got here, I realized this was probably the best decision, the best thing that could have happened to me.
Okay.
I was able to reinvent myself here. I was able to still go to Los Angeles, work in film and television, spend time there working, and when I was done, I'd come home, and when I was home, I ended up doing theater.
Right. So part of your reinvention is moving to Cleveland and then immersing yourself in theater.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Cleveland as quite few people know, it has the second largest theater district east of, west of New York.
Absolutely.
And that supersedes Chicago. So you're here now, Playhouse Square, Caramel House, the oldest black theater in the nation, but you've done work at other theaters, including those two. So explain that in your work with local artists.
Moving to Cleveland, when I say it's the best thing that could have happened for me to me career-wise, being able to reinvent myself. I'd never done theater until I moved to Cleveland. Just theater.
Other than the Phantom of the Opera.
Other than the Phantom of the Opera in Los Angeles, and also Les Mis. The Phantom of the Opera was at the Pantages in Los Angeles, and Les Mis was at the Phantom of the Opera was at the Almonson Theater, and Les Mis was at the Pantages in Hollywood. So that was my experience in big theater. But when I moved here, wow, this has been such an experience because I got to bring everything that I know about costuming to theater. I got to just, with being able to do the things that I was able to do at Caramel, The Wiz, Dreamgirls, God's Trombone. That's just to name a few things that I was able to do there. But I got to everything I learned about costuming from film and television, I got to bring it to the theater. I got to put it on stage, And, for Near West, I did
the Near West Theater.
Near West Theater. I did Sweeney Todd. When I say I got to bring these things, the research became different for me because now it became mine. I got to make everything that I've done here in Cleveland, I got to make it mine as a costumer / costume designer, but more importantly as a costumer.
Right. So you are the lead. So out west or in productions, television, film, you're sort of working under someone.
I'm sharing
sharing.
I'm sharing that responsibility. There's the designer, the wardrobe supervisor, and the costumer. Now, depending on the production, there may be several costumers. Of course, there's a female and male, but then there may be several other ones depending on the scope of the production. But here in Cleveland, that responsibility, all of it fell on me. And so that's what made it exciting for me to do what I was doing here. To have all of that I've been standing back and watching and being a part of, but only to do just one thing. Here I got to do all of it and control that image, that look.
So if I name some theaters, just a few in the regional, the local area, could you just tell me one of your favorite shows? So if I say Little Chagrin Valley Theater, what production comes to mind?
Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoats.
Okay. Caramel House.
Oh my gosh. Dreamgirls, The Wiz, God's Trombone, Carolina Change.
Aurora Theater. You've done work there, haven't you?
Oh, I had the privilege of recreating costumes for Fiddler on the Roof, one of my favorites, you know. And for St. Edward's, I did St. Edward's High School, Phantom of the Opera. So I got a chance to recreate some of these things that I was always a part of. It was a collaboration with, of course, me and the designer, whoever that might be. Here, it is a collaboration between myself and the actor. We're creating these characters.
So what local talent in Cleveland, be it actor, performer, playwright, director, have you worked with that sparks a memory?
Oh, they're numerous. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of actors, you know like Pete Robinson. There's the directors is, I say Pete Robinson because we worked in California together the first time.
He's in Cleveland?
He lives here in Cleveland.
Okay.
But then Terrence Spivey discovered me.
And Terrence Spivey,
he started working. He was at Caramel, and I happened to be interviewed by somebody. They got the information wrong, and he tracked me down.
Right.
And we started talking, and he asked me to do something. One of the first plays I did was August Wilson's Permanent Collections, and from there it's been history between he and I.
And so just for our audience,
Yeah.
Terrence Spivey is the former artistic director at Caramel House, and he's a local playwright, a national playwright, and he's doing great work abroad.
Yeah.
The Tamir Rice story, he created work for that, and the Clotilda, Ocean My Bones, about the last enslaved ship that was brought to the Americas illegally. So when he mentions Terrence Spivey,
that's like I said, I worked with directors, but Terrence Spivey and Mike Oakman, those two, I must say, those are the two impressed me more than anything here.
So there are a lot of people, we're here in this educational setting, and theater majors and film majors and journalism majors. What advice could you give someone who was interested in going into the world of film, but not as a talent in front of the camera, but a talent behind the camera?
Yeah.
What would your advice be?
It is the most, I think, it's very lucrative. Find your niche. You know, if you like cameras, learn everything you can about it. You know, if you're doing makeup, you do hair, whatever you do, be good at it. I say that because this is a very competitive business, the world of entertainment, especially film and television. And when I started as a costumer, it's extremely competitive. So when you get hired, that means you have to be really good at what you do. So in order to succeed in all of this, be really good at be good at it. I mean, you know, that's the only way I can express that, because that's the only way I could do the things that I've done, like Men of Honor, Swordfish, Hank Russell Cooper, Living Single, Mark Curry's a friend of mine. All of these different shows, you first, because Hollywood is a very competitive, when it comes to the industry, it's very competitive, no matter what. If you're sweeping floors, people are competing to do that because it pays very well. It pays really good. Craft service, all of these, they pay, and so people go into it and they make it a business, they make it their profession, and they do well at it. Not just the person standing behind the camera, the person doing, everybody. Okay. So you have to be really good at it. So I encourage everyone, whatever it is, be good at it. The one rule of thumb that I had in this business was, someone said, you can make a lot of money, you can make a little bit of money, or you can make no money. But it's your craft. As long as you can work your craft, the money's going to follow. So it's not about the money. It's about being good at your craft. Because that's going to always be there. But if you're not good at it, then there it is.
You have been so good at your craft that you've been awarded a star in the Palm Springs Walk of Stars.
Yeah.
And so
Yes,
you
I
mentioned Frank Sinatra and the Marx Brothers earlier, but you're joining them in the ranks to receive a star on the Walk of Stars in Palm Springs next year, which is huge for your contributions to the arts. And you are the first costumer to receive such an honor.
Yeah.
How do you reflect on this achievement as we, bring this conversation to a close? What does that mean to you? What do you hope to do with it? How can we support it as you celebrate 50 plus years as a costumer?
Yeah, well, you know what? Being nominated, it is quite an honor. It is a privilege. And more importantly, I get to be the voice of costumers that nobody knew existed. When I started in the 70s, nobody knew there were black costumers in the industry. I didn't. At 19 years old, as an apprentice, a young man of color walking up to 20th Century Fox, for 1 year, I was an apprentice for 1 year, 3 months at the 4 major studios, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, Warner Brothers. I met Lou Gossett Jr. at Warner Brothers. He and I were great friends up until, I rest in peace. And then Universal Studios. So doing all of that and going through whatever a young person of color had to go through back then, so I'd use it today, I think, I don't know. But I know back then it was a challenge. But we got through it, and here we are today. And there's maybe about 4 or 5 of us left, original costumers. And I get to call their names. I get to call the names of those that weren't here, that mentored me to a certain degree, So it's quite a journey. It's quite an honor to have a star. Again, I just say, being the first costumer or the first costumer of color to receive a star. That's below the line. Above the line, photographer. Above the line are directors, producers, actors. Below the line are cameramen, costumers, craft service. So when you're really good at what you do, then
Well, Harold,
I don't
Harold
know.
Crawford, trailblazer, costumer, receiving the star on the Walk of Stars. It is an honor to have you here with us in our studio.
Thank you.
Harold,
Thank you
much for taking out the time to inspire us. Until next time, I'm Neil Hodges. This is Cleveland Conversations, and thank you for joining us. Enjoy.